Hey there, mixture of divergent and non-divergent people watching. Today, I'm going to talk about the lesser-known symptoms of autism. In the last two videos, I covered the main and the minor symptoms of the condition, but there are a few that go unnoticed for most people. So here we go. Posture is the first symptom I'm going to discuss. This can include keeping your arms, hands, feet in weird positions, tilting your head, or stepping on your tiptoes when you walk, or holding objects in a strange way. For instance, I hold my arms up and grab them by the hands and keep them like this, and a lot of people have asked me why I do this. It just feels comfortable for me and it suits me, and I don't really have another explanation why I do it. I used to have a very unusual walk as a kid and as an adolescent, which I realized and managed to change later in life as it was starting to cause me some back problems. Another quirky and often missed symptom is needing more personal space. It has to do with the social anxiety we all experience as autistic and the lack of communication skills we have. Many autistic people do not like someone to stay very close to them as it makes them feel very uncomfortable. I'm definitely one of them, and when I add my hypersensitivity to touch, if someone is standing very close to me and tapping me on my shoulder or anywhere else, I can get into a meltdown even if it's friendly. On the other hand, autistic people tend to get along very well with animals. Their presence can be very calming, and cuddling them can sometimes alleviate anxiety like nothing else. I love cats, dogs, birds, reptiles, most of the animals, to be honest. They're cute and they don't ask you uncomfortable questions like people do. Clothing is another very missed out symptom with autistic folks. We can have a very niche style of fashion or not care at all. It often has to do with comfort, but it could also be a craving for different stimuli like color and texture. As I said in the previous video, a lot of autistic people are into arts and music, and this can heavily influence the way they like to dress. Organization skills. This can show up both ways. My girlfriend, for instance, is very disorganized. She never makes her bed, she never folds her clothes. She tends to do things her own way, not according to any schedule. I'm at the other extreme. I always fold my clothes perfectly. I organize the folders on my PC to be very neat and understandable. I follow a strict schedule and I always arrange stuff at home like plates and shelves in a very particular way. Otherwise, it bugs me all the time and is very disturbing. And I'm pretty sure some of this has to do with my OCD as well. But I'm going to talk about that in later videos. Moving on to the next symptom. Sleep problems is another very rarely noticed issue. It has to do with anxiety, but also with hormonal imbalances in the brain. I'm going to touch on this subject in later videos. I used to struggle a lot with my sleep. I would twist and turn until morning sometimes, but eventually I found a way to achieve a better sleep. Echolalia, which is a condition on its own, can be very often present with autistic people. It is the repetition of words in response to someone saying them. My brother and I tend to do that often. It could be because we had a hard time understanding the subject matter, so we repeat it to ourselves in order to hear it internally. Or it could be that the word or expression sounds funny and we keep repeating it and laughing at it. This can be very amusing to watch. Alexithymia is also a condition on its own, which is very often present with autistic people. It is the inability to perceive or identify emotions in others or in self. and also the difficulty of expressing emotions in general. My girlfriend and I have had a lot of issues in our relationship due to that. We feel misunderstood and we don't know why. And sometimes we figure it out after a few hours or even a few days how that emotion came to be. I'm going to talk about alexithymia in separate videos in order to give some tips on how to better understand emotions in yourself and others, which can be a great boost to communication skills. And moving on to the next one. Have you heard of an autistic stare? I get very annoyed when I see these questions on autism tests that have to do with avoiding eye contact. Well, this is the opposite of that. That is, having too much or inappropriate amount of eye contact. It still feels very uncomfortable for me, I can tell you. It's just that I can't really comprehend how much eye contact is appropriate in any given situation. I'm just not aware of it. My grandpa used to tell me when I was a kid to look at the teacher when he or she is speaking in the eyes, and I took it literally. And from here follows the next obvious symptom, which is taking things literally. This can be such a detriment in social communication, especially when people try to avoid saying something in order not to hurt someone, or use words and phrases rhetorically, or use sarcasm. It is not always the case that I would take things literally, and over the years I have learned to adapt a bit, but especially if I'm tired or I'm upset, I tend to do that. I have asked people who are close to me numerous times to please talk to me straight in order to avoid any misunderstanding or confusion later. Being inappropriate at times is very common for autistic folks. I would definitely classify that as a lesser known symptom of the condition. We might laugh in a very unusual situations where other people wouldn't. We might blurt out inappropriate words or sentences without realizing this unless someone reacts to it. Autistic people can behave simply not in the way that a given social situation requires. And guess what? Our social skills tend to be lacking or inexistent sometimes. Moving on to picking up new skills. This can be a hell of a struggle for a lot of autistic people. I'm very much included in this bunch. If you're not a tech savvy, learning a new software or just getting used to a new phone that you have can be very, very irritating. I keep asking, why did they change the menu? It's the same freaking model or the same freaking app. And one of my favorite lesser known symptoms is autistic people and neurodivergents in general tend to stick together. We often make friends amongst one another because it's just so much easier to communicate with other weird people like you, and it is easier for you to be weird in front of other people who exhibit some of the same behaviors, and it is easier to be accepted in such circles of people. And of course, on the other hand, it's very, very difficult for us on the spectrum to communicate with people who are neurotypical. When I look at my friends and family, I mostly find people who have autism or ADHD or both. Last, I want to touch on the subject of fear. I used to be a very, very scared kid. I managed to get rid of some of my fears over time, but fear has been and still is a big part of my life. Situations, people, certain objects or sounds, or any kind of stimuli would very often provoke fear in me, which I did not know how to deal with. It would very often cause me to melt down because I couldn't explain myself why I was so afraid of somebody or something, or I was just simply embarrassed to say that I'm afraid. This can also show up the other way around. Some autistic people may lack an appropriate fear response in some situations, which may end up causing them trouble. My girlfriend's disregard for traffic lights sometimes scares the crap out of me. Meanwhile, she's so scared of crowds of people. So yeah, fear can go both ways. With this, I conclude this long list of lesser known symptoms of autism. Although I'm sure there are many more to cover, as each and every autistic individual is different and expresses their condition differently. Thus, symptoms are often not as obvious as people would think. I hope you enjoyed my company in this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace be with you.